You know that exact feeling, right? It is, well, it's basically this universal human experience. You're driving down the highway, your stress levels are already like super elevated because you're running 5 minutes late for a crucial meeting.
Oh, yeah, and your heart is already kind of pounding.
Exactly. And then suddenly you feel it right through the steering wheel. Just this thump, thump, thump. You have a flat tire.
The absolute worst timing possible, always.
Always. So you pull over, you put the car in park, and I mean, to make it a perfect cinematic cliche, the sky just opens up and it immediately starts pouring rain.
Naturally, because why wouldn't it rain?
Right. And your first instinct, which is quite natural, honestly, is to grip the steering wheel, look up at the ceiling of your car and just yell, "Why is this happening to me?"
Yeah, we've all been there. I mean, we are biologically and psychologically wired to view those moments as enemies, as these malicious, chaotic forces that are just out to destroy our day or our plans or even our lives.
It really feels personal in the moment.
It totally does. It's entirely human to want the path of least resistance. Our brains are essentially designed to conserve energy and avoid friction. So we perceive any obstacle as a direct threat to our well-being and our safety.
But what if we have got that entire framework completely backwards?
I mean, that is the big question.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, we are about to unpack how to completely flip that script.
Welcome back to Transformation Talks, everyone.
So glad you're here with us.
This is an After the Amen deep dive of the latest, just incredibly perspective-shifting sermon from Transformation Ministries' own speaker, Pastor Jeffrey West.
This is a powerful message this week.
Truly. And before we go a single step further into, how to rethink the worst days of your life, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss any of these deep dives. Trust me, you will want this kind of content in your regular rotation.
You really will. So today's mission really centers around one core thesis from Pastor West's message. It's a statement that, honestly, it demands a lot of reflection.
I've been thinking about it all week. Same here. The thesis is, your challenge is not your enemy, it is your teacher.
Wow. Yeah, just let that sink in for a second.
Right. The goal of this deep dive is to explore the actual mechanics of developing a growth mindset when facing life's inevitable storms, and to really understand this profound idea that God does not waste a single drop of your sweat, your tears, or your pain.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by defining our terms, because the word challenge, it gets thrown around so casually today.
Yeah, people use it for everything.
Like people talk about a challenging commute or a challenging new diet, but Pastor West provided a very specific working definition for this context.
He did, and it's super helpful.
He said a challenge is a difficult situation, task, or problem that requires effort, perseverance, skill, or determination to overcome. It's not just a minor inconvenience.
Right, a flat tire is an inconvenience. A real challenge forces a demand on your current capacity.
Exactly. And the sermon made this very helpful distinction between natural challenges and spiritual challenges.
That distinction is crucial for context, I think. Natural challenges are just the baseline human experiences we all face, regardless of our worldview or spiritual beliefs.
Right, like the everyday stuff.
Yeah, it's the friction of learning a complicated new software system at your job, or trying to recover from an unexpected medical bill, or, as the pastor vividly mentioned, the overwhelming task of raising twins.
Oh man, shout to the twin parents listening. That is serious resistance.
It really is. When a parent brings twins home, the sleep deprivation and the sheer logistical nightmare can make them feel completely incapable.
Totally overwhelmed.
But through the necessity of just showing up every single day, they develop an internal stamina they never knew they possessed. They gain a profound level of patience and efficiency.
So true. And then on the other hand, we have spiritual challenges. These are the trials, the seasons of intense opposition, or the deep testing that God actually allows.
And he uses.
Yes, uses to refine your faith. Overcoming these isn't just about becoming a more capable, highly functioning human being. It's about developing spiritual endurance and character.
Which brings up this fascinating concept from the sermon, the fundamental difference between growing and maturing.
Oh, I loved this part.
The contrast between growing and maturing is where we really start to see the divergence between a passive life and an intentional one, because growing is simply a biological, chronological inevitability.
Right, it just happens to you.
Exactly. If you're breathing, you're growing older, time passes, cells divide, you age. But maturing is a deliberate choice. You do not inevitably mature just because you survived another calendar year.
That is so convicting. Pastor West made that sobering observation that a person can sit in a ministry, occupy the exact same chair week after week for 20 years, and possess absolutely zero spiritual understanding.
None at all. If they refuse to actively engage with the process of transformation, they stay stagnant.
Let's look at it like a gym membership. You can pay your monthly fee, you can walk through the automatic doors of that building for 20 straight years.
Drink the expensive protein shakes, wear the specialized lifting shoes.
Yeah, all the gear. And you are growing older that entire time. But if you never actually walk over to the rack and pick up the heavy iron, you will never build muscle.
You're just walking around the building.
Exactly. The biological mechanism of muscle hypertrophy literally requires you to subject the muscle fibers to heavy resistance so they sustain micro tears.
It needs the damage to grow.
Right. The body then repairs those tears, making the tissue thicker and stronger. Your 20 years of perfect attendance in the building simply do not count if you actively avoid the resistance.
That biological reality maps perfectly onto the spiritual reality, which leads to the first major principle Pastor West laid out. Nothing grows without resistance.
Nothing. It's just a universal law.
It is. Like, to step away from some of the more common metaphors for a moment, think about how a vaccine works in the human body.
Oh, that's a great example.
A vaccine is literally the intentional introduction of resistance. You introduce a small, manageable amount of a pathogen so that the immune system is forced to wake up, figure out a defense, and build antibodies.
Because without that initial friction, the body remains completely vulnerable.
Exactly. The resistance is the very thing that secures your future health.
I love that framing. Or even, thinking about it like a video game. As a player, you know you're heading in the right direction because the enemies get harder.
Oh, that's so true. If it's too easy, you're probably lost.
Right. If you were just walking through empty digital rooms with zero resistance, you were going the wrong way. The challenge is the indicator that you are approaching the next level.
Which ties directly into the book of James, chapter 1, where it says, "Count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations," or various trials.
Now, we need to handle that verse with incredible care, right?
We really do. Because count it all joy is often misinterpreted as a command to enjoy suffering, which is neither healthy nor biblical.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you force a smile and throw a party when you lose your career or get a devastating medical diagnosis.
No, not at all. Counting it all joy is about recognizing the inherent long-term value of what the resistance is biologically and spiritually producing within you.
Because James specifies that the testing of your faith produces patience, endurance, and ultimately a maturity where you lack nothing.
The pressure is the prerequisite for the persistence.
Man, that's good. And we see the ultimate case study of this pressure in the life of Joseph.
Oh, Joseph's story is wild.
It really is. This is someone who faced an almost unimaginable weight of resistance. He's betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a literal pit, sold into human trafficking, lied about by Potiphar's wife when he was acting with complete integrity.
And then just abandoned and forgotten in a dungeon.
Yeah, he had every reason, psychologically speaking, to become the most bitter, vengeful person on the planet. But he didn't get bitter, he got better. He eventually gets elevated to second in command in all of Egypt.
Joseph's narrative is critical because it proves that God's favor does not equate to the immediate removal of suffering.
God did not miraculously teleport Joseph out of the pit or the prison cell. The suffering was sustained over a really long period.
It was years of waiting and suffering.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, but also really hard. I need to push back on this a little bit, because it is one thing to discuss this theoretically in a deep dive, and it is another to live it.
Absolutely. The reality is messy.
I hear what you were saying about God being in the fire, but practically speaking, when the betrayal comes from your own family, when, as the pastor pointed out, you are the baby boy and your own flesh and blood discards you out of pure jealousy, how do you handle that?
That kind of pain is devastating.
The pain of that is so loud it usually drowns out anything spiritual. How is someone actually supposed to count it all joy? How do they focus on God's presence when they're sitting at the bottom of a dark hole, looking up at the faces of their own brothers who just threw them in?
Yeah, how do you not let that completely destroy your capacity to trust?
Exactly.
That is the heaviest, most complicated part of the human experience. And you are entirely right. The pain doesn't just vanish because you are spiritual.
You still feel every bit of it.
You do. The mechanism of survival here is not suppressing the trauma. It is about a very difficult, intentional shift in your psychological and spiritual anchor.
What does that shift look like?
Well, when a person is deeply betrayed, the brain naturally wants to loop the trauma. It wants to replay the faces of the betrayers constantly as a way to protect you from future harm.
Right, it's a defense mechanism.
But the scripture notes repeatedly during Joseph's trauma that the Lord was with him. The key to preventing bitterness from taking permanent root is interrupting that trauma loop.
By doing what?
By shifting your focus from the people who threw you in the pit to the God who climbed down into the pit to sit in the dark with you. His sustained presence is the counteragent to the bitterness.
Wow. That reframes the entire concept of enduring a trial. If God does not immediately pull us out of the painful situation, then what we do and how we think while we are sitting in the dark becomes the most critical variable in our story,
It is the only variable you can actually control.
which connects perfectly to the next logical step in the sermon. Since we established that resistance is both unavoidable and necessary, how you choose to respond to that resistance dictates your future.
Your response is your jurisdiction. Pastor West anchored this concept in Philippians 2.14:16, which is a very challenging directive. It says, "Do all things without murmuring and disputing."
Yeah, do all things without complaining is a verse most of us would prefer to pretend does not exist on a Tuesday morning when the alarm goes off.
Seriously. But what's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism Pastor West introduced. He talked about rehearsing versus reversing.
Yes, break that down for us.
The psychology behind rehearsing versus reversing is profound. When you complain, you are not just harmlessly venting steam, you are actively rehearsing the problem.
You're practicing it.
Exactly. You are training a network in your brain called the reticular activating system. When you continuously verbalize negativity and complain about how unfair a situation is, you program your brain's filter to actively seek out more evidence to validate your complaint.
So rehearsing negativity literally wires your brain to be blind to potential solutions.
It is confirmation bias on steroids.
You lock your vision entirely on the obstacle, and suddenly the obstacle is the only thing that exists in your reality. It's huge. So what does it mean to reverse it?
Faith is the mechanism that reverses that cognitive dynamic. And to be clear, faith does not deny the existence of the problem. It is not toxic positivity.
Right, you're not pretending the flat tire isn't there.
No, but it refuses to give the problem the starring role in your mental rehearsal. Faith consciously tunes the brain's focus toward God's purpose and God's capacity, rather than your own current limitations.
The historical example the pastor used for this was so good. The story of the Israelites and the 12 spies.
A classic example of this exact psychological trap.
They were standing on the very edge of the promised land. Moses sends 12 guys in to run reconnaissance. All 12 spies walk the exact same terrain, they look at the exact same walled cities, and they measure the exact same giants.
They all had the exact same data.
But 10 of them return and do exactly what we are talking about. They rehearse the problem. They deliver a negative, complaining report focused entirely on the size of the giants and their own feelings of inadequacy.
And what happened to them?
Well, those 10, along with the entire generation that listened to their contagious complaining, never stepped foot into the promise. They died in the wilderness, but Joshua and Caleb reversed the dynamic.
They looked at the same giants but chose to speak with faith.
They focused their rehearsal on God's size, not the giant size, and they were the ones who inherited the land.
What's so wild about that is the complaining of the 10 spies wasn't just a personal failure of courage. It was a societal contagion that delayed and destroyed the promises for an entire community.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Let's bring this down to our daily lives. Pastor West made a brilliant, highly practical point about how contagious complaining is, even in a local church setting.
Oh, this was so practical.
Imagine someone is volunteering to set up an event and they have to arrive 30 minutes early. If that person starts murmuring and complaining about the inconvenience of losing half an hour of sleep, well, someone else nearby hears that.
Someone who arrived with the genuine, joyful heart to serve.
Exactly. And suddenly their energy is drained, and they don't want to be there either. Whining about these small, everyday friction points reveals a fundamentally immature mindset.
And that immaturity is the exact thing that could be delaying the larger promises God has for your life.
You cannot always choose the challenge that walks into your life, but you must take absolute responsibility for your response to it.
Taking responsibility for the response is the hallmark of maturity, and it forces us to look down the timeline. If we stop complaining and if we actually lean into this painful resistance, where is it ultimately leading us?
Right, because no one wants to endure the tuition of pain just for the sake of suffering.
No, there has to be a destination. And the destination is preparation for a greater purpose. Pastor West brought in Romans 8.28, that all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose.
But the nuance he added there is essential.
It is. God does not just passively observe your bad situation and try to make the best of it. He is actively orchestrating the preparation through the challenge. Because in the spiritual economy, preparation must always precede promotion.
Always.
Yeah.
We see the mechanics of that preparation so clearly in the deep dive the pastor did on David and Goliath.
Such a great shift in perspective on that story.
When most people think of David, they only visualize the glorious cinematic moment, right? The young shepherd boy walking onto a chaotic battlefield, slinging a smooth stone and dropping a 9-foot giant, while two massive armies watch in stunned silence.
It's the highlight reel.
Exactly. But David didn't just walk out of his living room on a random Tuesday and defeat a seasoned killer out of nowhere.
The public victory was entirely the byproduct of intense secret preparation. Long before the battlefield, David was out in the remote shepherd fields, completely isolated.
Just doing the boring hard work.
And dangerous work. When a lion attacked his flock, he fought it. When a bear tried to take a sheep, he fought it. He was engaging in life-or-death combat when absolutely no one was watching.
There was no audience, no applause.
No king offering him a bounty. He was building the neurological reflexes, the courage, and the character of a leader in total obscurity. God was using the extreme resistance of the lion and the bear as a secret training simulator to prepare him for the giant.
So when David finally walks into the Valley of Elah and faces Goliath, he isn't standing there calculating the giant's height or looking at his heavy armor. He is consulting his own resume.
He's looking at his past experiences.
Right. He is accessing the archives of his secret battles. Those hidden challenges provided the experiential data he needed. They gave him the absolute confidence that the exact same God who delivered the apex predators of the wild into his hands would do the exact same thing with this uncircumcised giant.
David had the character and the capacity to handle the public moment because that capacity had been forged into him through earlier hidden challenges.
Which leads to a deeply sobering question Pastor West posed the congregation.
This question hit hard.
He asked, if someone dropped $50,000 into your bank account today, do you actually have the character to manage it?
Or would that sudden influx of resources destroy your life, your marriage, and your discipline?
That is a mirror I think a lot of people are afraid to look into. We're all constantly praying for the promotion, the sudden financial breakthrough, or the massive platform and influence.
But greater responsibility absolutely demands greater character infrastructure.
If you lack the moral and spiritual fortitude to handle the $50,000, then the frustrating financial limitation you are experiencing right now isn't an enemy trying to starve you.
It's a teacher.
Yes. It is a teacher forcing you to learn budgeting, discipline, and reliance on God so that tomorrow's massive assignment doesn't crush you under its own weight.
Synthesizing all of these principles really reveals the monumental shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. A person trapped in a fixed mindset sits in the middle of a painful trial and asks, why is this happening to me?
They view themselves entirely as a victim.
Exactly, a victim of random circumstance, and their only prayer is for God to immediately remove the pressure. But a person operating with a growth mindset asks a profoundly different question. They ask, Lord, what are you teaching me in this?
They recognize that the challenge is the classroom itself.
We cannot afford to waste our challenges by only begging for the exit door. We have to ask God to reveal the specific character trait he's trying to forge through the fire.
I completely agree with the necessity of that shift, but I also want to acknowledge that it is incredibly difficult. We are talking about the tuition of pain, and let's be honest, that tuition is staggeringly high.
It's extremely high.
Developing a growth mindset in the middle of a storm, especially a storm involving grief or betrayal, is a daily, grueling practice. It is not a light switch you just flip and suddenly you are completely at peace with your suffering.
No, it requires a lot of grace for yourself as you slowly learn to ask, what am I learning? Instead of, why is this hurting?
But the payoff for doing that work is that you don't waste the pain.
It is the hardest work a human being can do, but it is the only path that ensures the pain serves a purpose rather than just leaving a scar.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Pastor West's message, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought. I want you to think about the biggest, most intimidating, sleep-stealing Goliath you are facing in your life right now.
The thing keeping you up at night.
Yeah, the obstacle that looks like it is standing in your path for the sole purpose of destroying you. What if that giant isn't actually your enemy? What if it is just an overgrown bear?
Wow.
What if the thing you are begging God to take away is actually a final exam in a secret classroom, designed by God not to break you, but to finally hand you your crown?
When you truly realize that the obstacle is the path to your purpose, the fear just loses its grip.
It changes your entire posture toward life. Your challenge is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Listen, if this deep dive brought you value, if it challenged your perspective or gave you some new tools for the classroom you are currently sitting in, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
And this is just scratching the surface of what Transformation Ministries offers.
Exactly. We want to personally invite you to join the community live every single Sunday at 10 a.m. You have multiple ways to engage. You can join online via the Transformation Ministries VB YouTube channel or catch the live stream on their Facebook page.
But if you are local, there is truly nothing like experiencing the worship and the word in the room.
So true. Come join us in person at the church. The physical address is 4986 Euclid Road, Suite number 1, Virginia Beach, Virginia.
I highly recommend hearing Pastor West deliver this entire message in his own voice, with all of his original passion and context. You can watch the full replay of this sermon and many others right on the Transformation Ministries YouTube channel.
Make sure you go check out the full replay. Remember, the next time that tire goes flat in the rain or the giant steps onto your battlefield, don't rehearse the problem.
Reverse it.
Reverse it. Look for the teacher, pass the test, and step confidently into your promise. Thank you for joining us on Transformation Talks, and we will see you on the next deep dive.